want you all to be aware also that our partners in the Molalla and Santiam watersheds have greatly suffered from the past events, the events of the past week. Some have even lost their homes as watershed council members, and I certainly hope that's not the case here. I don't believe it is, but we'll get into that after a bit. We mostly, and our staff is very anxious to get out on the ground and find out what the hell happened to our watershed. So to start that off, we're going to dispense with what, the plans. You've seen that we're going to dispense with the DEI business and also committee meetings. But I'd like to maybe, Tim Shibahara, can you start us off and kind of fill us in on what happened with the PGE facilities up at Faraday and North Fork?
You betcha. I will love to do that. And please, people, if you have questions as I'm going along, please interrupt me. It's quite a story, so it gets a little bit more exciting if you hear other voices than my monotone voice. And so kind of the way this progressed is I'm sure, as all of you can attest, it's all been a blur. This whole last week has just been complete. Everybody's been saying, I don't know what day it is. And, it feels like we got back from that holiday weekend on to Tuesday. And, lo and behold, there's a human caused fire up at the Upper Clackamas, up close to the Kallawash Fork. So that's River Mile about 56, quite a ways away. And, and everyone's like, yeah, okay, we have a fire up there, 300 acres. But with that windstorm, it started moving fast. And by midday, we made the decision to take the Oak Grove powerhouse offline, and that's River Mile 48. And so that's, 9 miles away, but, it was the safe thing to do. So what that means is we had to take and turn off the units, start spilling at Harriet Lake, all the water's going down the Oak Grove 4. And so we basically kind of set up that project and set it up so that, we could just kind of walk away from it. That evening, we left work, we thought everything was fine, and it was moving fast. We had heard that it had crossed Fish Creek Divide by that time, by Tuesday night. And at that point, I think everybody kind of did the same thing, where we started getting the evacuation orders right when I got home from work. And at that point, everybody just starts doing a mad scramble, because my house is directly in line with where the event's coming across. The wind was coming straight at me. And so basically for the next evening, I dealt with that. And about midnight that night, I get a call that the fire is at North Fork Dam. And so I race up to North Fork Dam, and with crew, we go down and we start making decisions and start thinking about, like, what are our risks here? Nobody anticipated it would be moving quite that fast. And we started thinking about what is going to happen with the dams if we lose the ability to communicate with them, if they no longer can transmit power, things like that. What goes on with, where does that water go? And we made the decision to take all the dams offline, set them up so they're spilling through the just into the river, and turn off units and walk away from them. And the other challenge that we had too is that all of our fish bypass systems, both juveniles going downstream and adults going up, are all dependent on us getting in there and mechanically manipulating things. They're engineered solutions is what they are. And so we had to basically do the same thing with all those facilities, set them into bypass. And it was not very easy. I know that most of you have been up to our adult sorting facility, or at least seen videos of it. And there's buttons you have to push. There's hydraulic gates that move. And that's how we get fish around that little block in the ladder. And so we had to basically kind of Mickey Mouse and figure out how to manipulate the hydraulics to put it into this bypass mode. The fire was actually behind me by the time we got done dealing with North Fork Dam. It had already moved past us down the river. And so as I was driving down the river, I mean, I have videos of, you can hear the fire that's on the opposite side of the bank that's basically going down the river. And so we basically got that entire project into bypass mode, all three facilities, North Fork Dam, Faraday Diversion Dam, and River Mill Dam, and basically got it to the point where we could just walk away from it within several hours, and pulled all of the operators out of Faraday, where they typically would operate from. And basically for the next several days, we just kind of rode the storm out. Wednesday was, there's just no way you could get on site. Thursday was, letting the firefighters do their thing. And Thursday night was about the time that they announced that basically they're pulling out of Estacada, that they no longer can fight it. And so at that time, it was all the way around the Faraday compound and down to almost to Estacada. And about the time that they made that announcement, the winds miraculously stopped right at that same point. And that's really what everything just kind of stopped at that point. Almost a marine layer lid kind of came over things. And without that wind, everything just really slowed down. And so we were able to send a reconnaissance crew out there on Friday. And I went out with them, and we were able to go out and start looking at what we can do if there are any more risks. There's still fires going around all over the areas. We have like the high bridge right there at Faraday that crosses over to Faraday Lake. Part of the abutments on that had burnt. And so we had crews out there trying to put out fires on that, making sure it's not having further damage. And so at that point, we started assessing power lines and also our communication lines. And what we found over the weekend is that we've lost the fiber optic lines and and many of the pole structures that are two different line systems that help support the project. And so we have the communication system back up. We already have operators back at Faraday this week. And so that's been great progress. We now have line of sight and can communicate everything. We don't have any of the facilities back online because we need the power up to those facilities in order to maintain a bunch of systems. And so we're working on that power line. Fish are still getting through. They're still doing great. Every time you go by, you can hear the coho just screaming through. I predict this is the biggest coho run we've had on the Clackamas, is what I'm predicting right now. And so we're getting a lot of things through. As I've told many people, we thought that we were going to actually have the largest Chinook run on record since 1958 this year. We thought we were going to break that mark. And we can't count the fish, so we can't really prove it. But, I think that we're pretty confident that it happened. I think we still may spike the ball anyways. And so that's kind of about where we're at with the project. The next big thing was several days ago, they finally sent a crew that got all the way up to the Oak Grove powerhouse. And that's now the next big question, is what's going on in the Upper Clackamas. I'm sure all of you are watching the heat maps as I am, but what's going on in the Upper Clackamas? And as we got up to the Oak Grove powerhouse, the assessment is that facility is okay. We don't see any really bad burn marks, on the facility, and we haven't really been able to evaluate the flow line where all the water comes in that's diverted the 9 miles from Harriet Lake all the way to there. And I imagine there will be problems with that, as there's a lot of like timber crib, like structures that hold up the flow line in different places, things like that. The Three Links community, we've seen very dire damage to that community. It's a historic company town. And there was, I believe, somewhere around like 17, 18 homes up there and a bunch of different facilities. We've lost almost all of it. There's 5 homes still standing. We have 7 pieces of large equipment that is up there, that everything from excavators, dump trucks, bulldozers, things like that, road graders, those are all destroyed. Miraculously, a fuel island is still there and fine. We were able to get up as far as the Job Corps, and we saw that about half of that area has been burnt up as well. So it looks like they've sustained heavy damage to the Job Corps as well. That's as far up as I believe anybody's gotten. I haven't heard of anybody actually getting to Ripplebrook. And I'm really curious about what the Oak Grove Fork looks like right now, because that's a tributary that we're very vested in. And we have a lot of habitat work that goes on in that area. I'm also just very curious about, I've heard rumors that the other fires, the Lion's Head fire is actually starting to wrap around and get close to Big Bottom right now. You know, maybe some of our Forest Service folks here might know more about that, but that's also another big one that's, I am doing a rain dance at every break I can right now, trying to get this rain event to show up here and start slowing things down. So that's about all I really have. That's about the story so far.
Thanks very much, Tim. I was a couple of questions. It was Timothy Lake involved, and also I assume when you say the largest runs in the North Fork records, I assume that's all wild, right?
Correct. We did have that 2004 run where we had a lot of hatchery fish come back, but as far as wild fish goes, this is what we believe is the largest wild run we've seen. And this is a relatively poor ocean year. And regarding
Timothy Lake is okay?
Yes, the fire has not gotten up that high.
And North Fork, not North Fork, but River Mill, that intake, I know the fire got pretty close to McIver, right?
It did not cross really very far across Highway 211. And so it didn't really make it down that far, yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other questions of Tim about what's going on at North Fork and Faraday? Thanks very much for that. I think I'm going to open it up in a minute, but Riss, I know that you need to come off mute, but you had some damage there from the wind, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff down for 2 days. If I wanted to go up or down the driveway on a return trip, I had to take a tree out. Not a large tree, fortunately, at any time. But during the wind, before the fires all get started, probably the biggest cottonwood along Foster Creek came down midway through the acclimation pond, hitting both sides of it. So it's, as it is, it's destroyed except the liner shot. Probably they think that they'll have enough panels and other structures on hand to take care of that and rebuild it as soon as they can and get a new liner for it. So the thought, Ben says, pretty much it'll be back in operation.
Good.
I guess.
Okay.
I guess the one at Carver took a hit too from a tree, so maybe that's what the pieces.
Yeah, and also John Borden isn't with us this evening, but a tree, one of it, and there's pretty big trees near his house, damaged, fell on his roof, and he's had some contractors out there. He's been working with that. Let's see, who's up? Todd, you told me that Collins kind of escaped most of the damage.
Yeah, the level 3 evacuation was right across the highway from Collins, but our staff went ahead and evacuated anyway because the exit from that site is directly to the highway. But they were back today, and really it's the smoke that's been a bother for there. And then I have another site in Southern Oregon that staff is evacuated from right now. That we're waiting on fires to calm down in Southern Oregon.
Yeah, these fires have not just affected us, of course, in the Clackamas, Molalla, and Santiam, but have also been down in the McKenzie. Of course, Blue River is basically gone. It's just mind-boggling what all is involved. Carl, do you want to talk a little bit about it? Was there any effect up there? And also, you've got something coming up on. Do you have a status report for the Sandy treatment plant?
Sure. we were fortunate in that we never really got any fires inside the city of Sandy. Although when I talked to the mayor and the manager, city manager, and I, we had kind of a conflab to try to figure out were we ever going to evacuate Sandy. We decided that even if we went to a number 3, we probably wouldn't evacuate the city. We would just throw all of our fire equipment at whatever it was that was coming at us. There's a lot of stuff that was in the works that we were going to try to do, things like build fire lines. We've got cats that were being stationed in places on the south side of the city. And the biggest concern was the old sewer plant, the one that's on Tickle Creek. The fire got to within about 2 miles of that. And although we didn't have any people to evacuate, we had the contract crews that were in there. They were trying to freshen up the fire lines around the plant. The people that were in that basin, that smaller basin, they all left. They were thinking the wind and the fire and the smoke and all the rest that night was really pretty nasty. We did have several trees fall down for a bit there. We couldn't get to the sewer plant because all trees knocked down on the road. So we had people out there late at night chainsawing and trying to figure out how to get into the area. Of course, the power was gone. Some of that was on purpose. Some of that was not on purpose. Like most of the city of Sandy was not on purpose. Several things got knocked out. I think we had electricity problems that night of the big storm. Went out about 7 o'clock at night. Didn't get it back on until first thing the next morning or late that night. And really fortunate in that the fire did not get into the city of Sandy, although we think of the almost 13,000 people that we have here in the city now, about 3,000 of them evacuated on their own. That night, with the storm working, all the trees coming down, the trash going across, all the roads looking like they were a mess anyway, we had back-to-back traffic on 26 headed into Gresham, and actually going up the mountain trying to get away from the Portland area, thinking that they could make it happen that way. Fortunately, what we've seen so far, we don't have any fires within the Sandy Basin, although the Sandy Watershed and the Forest Service are all trying to check, make sure they don't have anything that might be some of the problems that you guys are going to experience in the Clackamas Basin. So we're actively trying to figure that out and try to figure out. We still have people, by the way, who are out of power, locked out, still waiting for the power to get turned back on. Luckily, the city itself is pretty much back up. Terrible weather. The smoke is just creating all kinds of health issues. The night that we went to a level 2, I knew all the assisted living buildings and houses evacuated the seniors and the folks that were in those residences. And we must have had 20 buses moving those people out that night. It was quite the scene. I got some pictures of that, and how people were bussing up, getting out of town, going Lord knows where, but just out of Sandy, figuring that between the fire potential and the bad weather, they needed to be gone. So I would say that's probably our worst piece. Trees down, electricity out, people self-evacuating, that kind of thing. Kind of a scary couple of days, up to a week or so now. Things are starting to come back into order. People are coming back. I noticed that some buses are starting to show back up from the assisted living. So we're starting to see people coming back to their houses. I don't know all the people that evacuated. One of our other biggest problems was the terrible rumors going on. We had people burning down the city hall. We thought we had one of our major streets was in a big fire. Turned out it wasn't. People were getting shot because they were seeing looters. None of that happened that we're aware of yet, but we got a lot of rumors going on, and people are just not feeling comfortable about that. Boy, that's really got to slow down. We got to watch ourselves about how we talk about ourselves and where things are. And we have people at one time roaming some of the streets in Sandy with pickups and guns. Just not a good deal. I think that's pretty much slowed down. So that's kind of the status of Sandy. The fire never got more than maybe just a mile or two away from us at any one time. So we were all thinking we were going to have to do a lot of work. As far as the status of our planning goes, real quickly, our contract planner has been evaluating the outflow options at this point, and they have probably about 6 options at this point. And they are several, it's probably only 3 real solid options, but there's probably A and B and C options to them. One of the first ones is the old adage, which I really don't like very well at all. It's really not going to be an advocate of it. Just go straight down into the Sandy River, big culvert, dump it right in the water, treat it with all kinds of cooling elements. Lots of issues with that one, just is not good. And then there's an A, a 1A, where they're going to move it down the river a little bit, and another B that will move it up the river towards the fish hatchery. I don't like that one at all. Number 2 option is to run it to Roslyn Lake, but run it down through one of our roads. There's a road called Tenike, and we put it in the ditch line all the way out to Tenike Road, out to Roslyn Lake. And then there's option A would be to run it across the top of Sandy River, something like 30, 40 feet off the river's surface. There's another one that would go underneath the river. So there's, that's option 2. And some of that really looked pretty positive. There's a lot of advocacy for that one. And option 3 is to ship it to Gresham. Put a big 4 or 5 foot diameter culvert, put it in Highway 26 dirt next to that gas line that's there, and ship it to Gresham. And Gresham is going to charge us an arm and a leg for it. And that's environmentally probably best for us. Economically, no way. So it looks like what the best option is going to be some format or other at trying to get it to Roslyn Lake, which is, you know, a big hurrah for all of us here in Sandy. We're doing temperature turbidity studies all up and down the Sandy River at this point. Whole bunch of combination of studies that the Sandy Watershed has done some now with their studies, and they're going to try to combine all that into quite an elaborate understanding of the river, which I understand has never been done before, which is kind of shocking for me. But a lot of temperature and turbidity studies going on there. Communications with City of Portland about what's going on with their infiltration plant and how that's affecting the Bull Run and how that might interact with the Roslyn Lake thing, since Roslyn Lake used to be dumped off into the Bull Run, but now that's all plugged from the draining of Roslyn Lake, well, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. So no decisions yet. We would love to be able, as a city, get the presentation that we looked at here 2 weeks ago out to the different watersheds. We've got some other agencies we'd like to present it to, the Forest Service, City of Portland, and that kind of thing. And again, I'd love to be able to be a presenter sometime in that format. Lots of pictures, lots of data that we have at this point. Not done with the studies yet, but we have built these 3 alternatives that kind of make sense. Again, I think the Gresham thing is kind of a straw alternative. I'm shocked that we even thought about that one and considered it, but looking for a way to stay out of the Sandy River, I guess, and give it to someplace else. Still out there quite a bit in terms of a deadline. We hope to have the plans evaluated and understood someplace late 2021. So we got the rest of this
Okay.
and next spring and summer probably before we get all of our data together. We still have yet to have complete documentation on the plant that we're going to be building, the MBR plant. And we have a good, solid analysis about where we would put it, but what all that will mean in terms of what the quality of water will coming out, speed, temperatures, all that sort of thing is still in the process of being analyzed. So other than we have the alternatives and a lot of numbers starting to be crunched, that's kind of where we're at this point. So leave it at that.
Okay, well,
That's the answer.
thanks very much, Carl. I appreciate it. And while we're over on the other side of our watershed, on to the next one, and we want to welcome Middle Loftsgarden has joined us from OWEB, and we're happy to have her aboard. Gail, did you have something that you heard about over there that you wanted to present?
Just a few announcements from Water Environment Services. I'll try to be quick. So first, our office building, which is the Development Services building, is closed to the public right now because it's being used by the Emergency Operations Center for fire management purposes. So if anybody's trying to go to our office, you will not be able to get in. And then second, I wanted to just kind of give a little bit of props to our staff who are keeping the treatment plants running. We have a Hoodland plant that serves Brightwood and Welch's. I know it's not our watershed, but just note that between the high wind and the wildfires and then the public safety shutoffs by PGE, this all translated into 7 days of arduous around-the-clock work for our field operators. So to ensure that the Hoodland community could still safely dispose of their wastewater, they worked through some pretty bad conditions to operate our pump stations. We've got 6 pump stations in that area that needed to be operated, I believe, by generator 24 hours a day. And we had employees who, you know, their families were evacuating homes and they still managed to show up for work and keep things moving. So just wanted to give a shout out to them. Third, our Tri-City treatment plant just this week brought online a new 1.3 million gallon anaerobic digester. We had a presentation on this about a year ago, I would say, maybe sometime last year. And so it was a long process of planning and preparation, and it's online. And then last point that I thought might interest the Issues and Policy Committee is that our storm and sanitary rules and regulations and new standards are going to be available soon for public comment. So we're shooting to have them online in October, and there'll be a 30-day public comment period when that happens. This is just one step in getting public input. There will still be public hearings during the ordinance adoption by the board, which hopefully will happen towards the end of this year. So just wanted to make you all aware.
Okay. Thank you, Gail. Dave Tenney, take yourself off mute. Dave had a kind of a really heartfelt observation about someone else involved with the fire. Do you want to share that with us, Dave?
Yeah, many years ago, probably 25 years ago, we were living in New Mexico. We were living in the southern part, but we had friends in Los Alamos, and one friend in particular worked at the Los Alamos lab and lived there in that area. Excuse me. And they had a prescribed burn in the forest around there, but they did not coordinate with the Weather Service. Had they done so, they would have known that they were expecting exceedingly high winds. Long story short, the prescribed burn got out of control and it burned many, many homes. And she happened to live on a cul-de-sac, and her home was the only one that survived. And what she experienced after that was survivor's guilt. Plus, she had to deal with a lot of animosity of the people who actually lost their homes. And long story short is that she ended up leaving work. I think she moved to Astoria. But I just wonder, the reason I mentioned this to Bill and Cheryl in an email this morning is that we have friends in Blue River who thought their house had burned, but when in fact they found out that their home was one of 3 or 4 homes on the same road that did not burn. And so I wonder, I kept flashing back on the experience of my friend in New Mexico, but that's essentially it. It's not there. This is such a multiple faceted problem that we're all dealing with, and that's one area that I don't think people had really anticipated, is the reaction of others and your own reaction. That's
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. This is
Sure.
It's heartbreaking on so many fronts, and that front is probably just now approaching. And I've seen fires in Southern California that touch people and homes along canyons, and some left standing and experienced the very same kind of, not just survivor's guilt, but neighbors' animosity. And I just,
Sure.
it's,
Yeah.
I hope we can get around that. Is there anyone else on the call who has some observations about the fire and what's going on?
This is Maddie. I came in late because I wasn't able to get into the Zoom meeting. I just want to make sure that somebody has been in touch with Dave Bugney. Is he on the line, or do we know that he and
Yes.
his wife are okay? He's there.
Dave Bugney is here, and Dave, you want to let Maddie know that you're okay?
I'm here, Maddie, and I just want to let you know the
Dave.
Salmon Huckleberry Wilderness so far continues to be okay.
Oh, that's good news. Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Been thinking about you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Maddie. Anyone else want to check in?
Well, Bill, this is Doug DeHart. We're doing fine. Really nothing affecting us, but been talking to, a lot of longtime friends and acquaintances. And outside of the Clackamas, when you start talking to people in other parts of the state, several fish hatcheries got hit really bad. Maybe some of you heard that. Rock Creek on the North Umpqua is essentially gone. All the structures and equipment were destroyed, fish all killed, though they were able to get in there a couple of days ago and trap adults and transfer them elsewhere, so they have some brood stock for next year, but that's about the only plus. And 4 or 5 other facilities have been damaged, not so severely as that one. You may have heard Leeburg lost its water supply when Leeburg Dam was shut down and the canal was dewatered. So they lost some fish. Mostly they released everything on station so they wouldn't die. So they put a lot of fish prematurely into the river to do as well as they can, and they were able to transfer their brood stock too. But I guess significant repairs are going to be needed there. Several buildings were destroyed in a fire at Klamath Hatchery. The list goes on. If you're interested, ODFW has put out a news release or 2 on this. But anyway, that was another one where we got lucky here in terms of a lack of real damage. Some other people weren't so lucky.
Yep. Thank you very much, Doug. I will mention too, I think Adam has shared some of that on Facebook. The Minto hatchery on the Santiam was able to get back in, and actually their fish survived. to the point of they were back in there today, spawning some hatchery spring Chinook and so yeah, it's not good, it's not bad, but it is what it is. Anyone else care to share anything?
Bill?
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
I
Dave.
was late coming to this meeting, but how is Susie doing in where she lives, her property, her animals, and so forth?
That's a great question. I cannot answer that myself, except what I've seen on Facebook. And I know that several of our council members have reached out to her. She's, I just can't imagine that she's done double duty, saving all of those animals and getting places for animals to go, and still keeping track of what's going on the basin. Cheryl, do you have more information on that?
Yes. So she was evacuated out of Sandy. She's in Lake Oswego. And once she got situated in Lake Oswego, she really wasn't situated while she was spending about 50 hours without sleep while evacuating livestock to different locations. She currently is feeding animals that have been relocated. And so she does morning and evening, and that's what's taking her away from tonight's meeting. She did want to share her thanks for all of the contacts that our council members have extended to her. She states, "I've been overwhelmed by the sweet check-ins from some of our council and landowners." She thanks you for that. Her other hat as equine rescue has been firmly affixed for the past 7 days, so things have been a little busy. She did help Jennifer Sampson, our previous fiscal and administrative specialist, at her family farm in the Malala area. They had to evacuate. Jennifer had moved to the Dalles but had gone home to help evacuate out of Malala. Since the evacuation orders have slowed, incident crews have moved into a care and treat mode. So she's still with long days, but far less adrenaline than the initial few days. Yeah. She cares about everyone. We all are extending a lot of care, and heartbroken by the devastation that's occurring. And it leaves us wanting to do more for you all and for those who are in our community, our constituents. We may hear from others about what is going on for them, or from a statewide perspective that can be shared by Maida or others, if you'd like to comment.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that part there, I know where Susie's lives at. There was quite a few people that were evacuated. We think we have at least 2 houses that have been burned out in that area, that making a run towards our sewer plant there on the lower, or we consider lower, you could probably consider upper Tickle Creek there. And it's just pretty ragged. A lot of animals having to be transferred out. And again, a couple of houses that did get burned in that run that the fire made towards that lower part of Sandy country. So I didn't realize that Susie got evacuated, but I knew there were a dozen or so houses that all evacuated out of there. So kind of a mess.
Thank you, Carl. Maida, would you like to kind of update us on what you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everybody for letting me join tonight. I'm Maida, with the Executive Director with the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board and a resident of this watershed. So I have to say, it breaks my heart to hear a lot of the stories that are coming out, both from this meeting and from other conversations that I've had with folks. We were evacuated as well, but for a very short period of time. And Tuesday and Wednesday, we were offering up our place to other people, and Thursday we were rescinding that offer as we were leaving. But A huge thanks. Again, joined a little bit late, but for those of you who have been working so hard in this area, both prior to the fires and the great restoration work that I get to see on the Clackamas, and during and since. This is a stressful time for everybody. So I wanted to join tonight just to give a huge thanks to all of you for the work that you're doing for the council and in your day jobs. A couple of updates. I appreciate the fish hatchery update is a really important one. And so appreciate that you guys got a chance to hear that. I know there were some real concerns. I think they had 8 hatcheries under some level of evacuation notice at different points in time. And that's a lot for an agency to manage. At this point, and we'll be following up with specifics. So you guys are hearing this, some of this information first. We'll be following up with specifics next week. But our hope at OWEB is to convene the various councils and districts, land trusts, and tribes who either have land, have restoration projects within these areas, and kind of convene folks on a regional basis. As soon as you all are able to get just a little bit better handle on what's going on over the next couple of weeks, to have a conversation about what we're seeing as the immediate needs for organizations, and to work together with our federal partners like the Natural Resources Conservation Service and others to see what kinds of assistance we might be able to bring, whether that's, we sent out some information today about sediment reseeding in those places where folks can get in. Department of Agriculture has put out some guidelines around that. We know that the Forest Service will be going in with its bear teams to take a look at federal lands. We're having conversations to think about what that might look like, and can we take an all lands approach and look at private lands at the same time, or really try to coordinate that better. And so our plan is we'll be reaching out to Cheryl and others over the next few weeks to think about what are those immediate responses that we can provide. The challenge, of course, being right off the bat, the sediment. And some of these places are just going to be a big challenge to get in and reseed, but where we can, we should be looking at that, or straw bales or other options. And then we'll be continuing conversations with you all as we take a look at projects and what your priorities might look like. I know you guys are a key part of the focus investment here in the Clackamas. And I know that there's priorities can shift based on something this big. And so we'll be working with you as a partner to figure out what that looks like moving forward, and how we can work with and support you all. So I think, Cheryl, that's all I have, unless there are any questions. And again, just a huge thanks to the whole council for all of your work.
Thank you, Maida. Maida's pretty amazing. She was evacuated a day of the OWEB board meetings, weren't you? And continued with your meetings.
It was actually, thank you for saying that. It was not until the next day. We thought we were perfectly safe, and then we got evacuated during the blow up on Thursday. So on Wednesday, our board meeting, I was feeling pretty good about things, and luckily we'd stayed packed.
We are, thank you. You mentioned our Focus Investment Partnership that we'll be reviewing our prioritizations for the second biennium work plan. And this next week, we'll hold a question and answer period for folks who are updating their projects in our web-based program project tracker at clackamaspartnership.org. I think you're familiar with that, Maida, and many of folks that are on this call are familiar with it. So we're trying to make normal what we can while being sensitive to those who are still evacuated or unable to participate. We'll record all these meetings. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Maida. That was helpful, and we'll look forward. We always look forward to your support. Does anybody know Dave Bugney, perhaps? Anybody know about the Guttridges and how they came out?
I don't know specifically, other than I did talk to Rob Guttridge just a couple days ago about an unrelated matter, and he didn't. I was not thinking. I didn't ask him about it, but he didn't mention anything. So I'm assuming that given where they are,
Okay.
they're probably okay.
They're fine.
Okay.
They're on the other side of us.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add to the conversation?
You know, let me just
Okay,
add. Let me just add
Go
something
ahead,
real
Tim.
quick, Bill. Just from
Yeah.
being on the ground and some of the, I think that people need to start thinking about some of the recovery and restoration of what's going to go on post of this. We're seeing that there's a lot of stuff going on the ground. There's fire lines getting dug. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of destruction. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities to start getting in and thinking about these areas. I know that for us, we had a lot of ground that had like invasives on them, like ivy and blackberry and stuff like that. Well, kind of a neat thing that it's all gone, and maybe this might be a good time to, we got that dealt with. Let's get the good stuff in there now and get a jump on it, And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the watershed when it starts opening up. And I think that the River Basin Council will be in a good position to kind of lead that charge if we're ready to go.
I think we'll be ready. Thanks, Tim. The staff is really itching to get out there and anxious to go find out just exactly what the hell happened. I know that there may have been some issues at the Bonnie Lure project, but I don't know much about anything else. And I know that they're all ready to get out there, and I'm anxious for them to go too. We'll just have to wait, and hopefully tonight's flash floods don't happen. But if there's no one else, that I do want to call on Dave Budney, who held a, we've been talking about this Clackamas conference, this concept of having a conference about just what a unique river the Clackamas is. And he's thrown together a really great steering committee, and they had a wonderful meeting yesterday. And Dave, maybe you can share some of that with us, please.
Sure, just briefly, we met, as Bill mentioned yesterday, for a couple hours and talked about the conference, kind of flush out ideas. And I won't go through the 5 pages of minutes that we took to summarize all what we found. But basically, the essence of this is that this will be a virtual conference. It will happen next year, probably in the spring or summer of next year, to coincide with the CRBC's 25th anniversary since its inception. And that'll give us the ability and the flexibility of being virtual to do a lot of things that we couldn't do if things were in person. Of course, there's some drawbacks with that, but that's what you get with virtual like we're having here. We're going to have a 2-track approach. That is, we'll have a conference will be geared toward 2 levels of interest. Those that for the general public, so that we can get more landowners engaged, and those that within the Clackamas excited about what the Clackamas is all about, but also at a level that's also geared for scientists and engineers and professionals that are working in the Clackamas, so that we can get them to be more well-rounded and educated about the specific facets of the Clackamas. The conference will be free, so that folks don't have to pay for it. We're going to try to get some sponsorships to pay for any costs subject that'll be a part of this. We're going to be talking about 12 global topics, which I won't get into, but it's fairly universal in all aspects of the Clackamas. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. So we're looking forward to probably 3 or 4 more steering committee meetings to flush this out, and then we'll break into subcommittees and further refine the specific topics and speakers and whatnot.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's really pretty exciting, the concepts that Dave has come up with, and we're looking forward next spring also to our 25th anniversary. And Gail Shalom, who is your chair-elect, brought up the point that perhaps we could kick this whole thing off on our 25th anniversary, and maybe even the potential there. And we still have to talk it out with the steering committee but the potential is for monthly virtual meetings and videos to talk about just what a special place that we and the Clackamas River are in right now. Which brings me to our staff reports, and I will tell you that our November meeting is changed a little bit. We're unlikely to have our annual celebration as we know it, or maybe even given the late time and everything else that's gone on, we probably won't be able to do a silent auction. However, the staff, I believe, and Cheryl can or Adam can back me up on this, I believe that the staff is planning on at least a meeting with a video, and we will have our award ceremony. And I will say also that this is another call for, if any of you have ideas about who deserves one of our awards, or if you want to be on the nominating committee for our awards, please let myself or Cheryl or Gail know. And with that, Cheryl, do you want to get into the staff reports?
Sounds wonderful. Yes, we can move into that. Bill was mentioning the ongoing conversations that staff have had, primarily with Susie Cloutier and Adam Spencer's leadership on what can occur. There's much enthusiasm for informing our public and celebrating what you all have supported us in doing. So a few different iterations have occurred, and adaptation to be virtual was the first step, with some wonderful ideas for videos throughout the watershed. We may not get into the watershed to do so. I invite Adam, if he would like to give an overview of our current thinking. I can give him time to think about what he wants to say. I can always chat just a little bit, but I'm not quite noticing whether Adam would like to share his thoughts and planning to date.
Yeah, we've just been talking about, if the watershed celebration could still be an opportunity to get something positive together. And, we've seen a lot of activity on the river this summer, and we've had the We Love Clean Rivers River Ambassadors. And, the river still really draws people together, even in a time when we're socially distant. So, we're working on some videos for the LSEP grant to do a virtual tour of the watershed. And Dave Bugney, this also sounds similar to what you're proposing with the Clackamas conference, is material that we're going to be getting when we can get back out there. So, yeah, regardless of if we do the silent auction or if we have somewhat of a greater convening, we'll certainly get some media together just to thank people and just to provide some moment of celebration, thanking people for their participation in Shade Our Streams and for all the work they've done for the watershed.
Thank you, Adam. Several of our council members have participated in assisting with planning in the past, and we welcome your input for our future efforts. We'll talk more about these planning efforts leading into October. Anticipate that there would be virtual sessions through a few days. What staff have discussed is having opportunities for people to donate to the Wildfire Emergency Fund of different organizations, as well as for our future projects. So we want to, again, be helpful within our community and be sensitive to all the needs.
Okay.
I'd like to invite our other staff members to give an overview of the projects that were occurring through the close of August and since the last time we met. So I think with Liz, you have some exciting opportunities to discuss about the assessment project.
Hi, yeah. Everything seems so muted with everything that's going on, but we do have some positive things that are going on. We are moving forward with our project at the Kingfisher site, and that's still moving forward. And we've been working with state parks to secure some large wood and just working with them really closely on this project. And that's been a really good partnership over time. And since August, we hired a team to do an assessment of the lower river and help us look more closely at opportunities to improve habitat in the lower river. And we hired Waterways Consulting, which is a really great group that have worked in the Clackamas for a number of years. And they teamed with John Runyon and Todd Ellsbury. And we've been working a lot, looking at the lower river, looking at opportunities with the most impact. And that things have been going really great on that project. And we should have a new prioritized list of projects as we know them in the next couple of weeks. But, there's a lot of unknowns with everything that's happened. And so still kind of wading through all of that right now.
Thank you, Liz. Ari?
Right now, we've got a few Shade Our Streams projects that are finishing up, and I'm working on getting the fall maintenance together for those projects, as well as there's going to be a tour with PGE and DEQ. So before everything came to a bit of a halt, I was making sure that all that was going to be put together and taking care of our final survival monitoring. And originally, I was discussing this with Cheryl and other staffers, and we were really hopeful that we would be able to get board members out there to share in the experience of survival monitoring. But now that things have taken a bit of a turn, I'm just waiting for the first opportunity to get out there when it's going to be safe, both in air quality and in the evacuation levels, and get it taken care of and make sure that we stay on track for completion. Besides that, I'm working on the CRBC project. There's there's one or two properties that I need to go out and visit to see if there's any knotweed present. And I know we have Dave Stewart on the line. I appreciate him coming here. I believe I've mentioned this before. We did the culvert removal over Rock Creek last month, and I think everything went really well with that, and we're really excited to see how it turns out. Also, Cazadero North, a metro project that we helped secure funding on. They were doing in-water work, and they had a work extension until September 10th, so they should be done with the in-water construction, but I haven't heard any updates on that lately. But that's something that we'll be working on the re-veg for this coming season.
This is Maddie. Could you tell me, where is the Rock Creek culvert? What is the nearest cross street? That's the stream nearest my house, and I'd like to keep track of it.
That was out at Helzer Way. And I'm trying to think of the other cross streets there.
So if you go through Damascus, heading east, you take Weiss to
Yep.
Helzer Way.
Spell it for me, Helz. How do you spell Helzer?
Helzer Way, Helzer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you hear all of our activities. Certainly, as you know, we're involved with many other agencies and partners, including landowners. And our hearts are broken for where and how we can get back out helping everyone. You saw a letter that staff have created to go out to our constituent base with resources that we've been gathering, the resources from ODA that made a mention can be added to that, to lists from OSU Extension Service that will be helpful. One way that we can be helpful to all, we will continue our conversations with U.S. Forest Service, Metro. I know they are in a very hectic and urgent mode at this point, similar to Tim, although Tim mentioned being a monotone voice, but he typically has us all rolling and laughing. But anyway, equal concerns up in the upper watershed where the PGE facilities are. So all of what we're doing, and know that we have timelines to proceed with. We'll be reaching out to all of our partners, checking in. When might we resume? We want to be ready when they are. Certainly we are staying out of the roadways where evacuees need to have priority and our safety patrols. So that's part of why you hear Bill and all of us comment about itching to get out there. We're going to be itching until we know it's safe and that we're not interrupting the important work that has to happen at this time. Any comments from other staff on that? They have very eloquent words.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that's on my mind, as I've discussed with Cheryl, as I'm sure the other staffers who do field work have discussed with Cheryl, we're going to wait until things are safe before we start going out and continuing with our field work.
And what what we all are interested in is knowing from you all and other landowners, our partners, just what the conditions are at your location, what extent of the burn occurred. I'm trying to remember exactly what was going to be helpful to Ari, Liz, Susie, and Adam. So the extent of the burn, a quarter, 0.5%, 50%, was it crown, was it shrubs? Am I massacring my description, Liz, Ari?
No, not at all. It's hard not being on the ground and being able to look at these sites right away. But yeah, we'd love to hear any stories of whether areas we've worked in or your properties are just completely burned, or whether it's more patchwork and salvageable, things like that. There's a lot of unknowns right now, and we're all wondering how this is going to affect how we move forward and how we look at things and think about things, but we know that that'll come in due time. Still a moving situation.
And I think also any stories you all might have that are these good news stories. So I've been pretty actively sharing on social media all the information that we get, just because there's been a big lack of information and misinformation, as Bill alluded to earlier. But also just the stories that inspire people and give them hope, and that things will grow back. The river's going to be going fine. these other stories that get people out of the crisis mode and help them get back into this happiness mode that this year has been a tough one to get into.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay. I want to thank the staff. We really have an extraordinary group of people, young people there right now that are doing unbelievable things, and I'm really happy and pleased that this is occurring, and to see their progress. And Adam, I want to thank you especially for all of the social media postings, and we're looking forward to being able to get out there again when it's safe. Cheryl, do you have any other staff reports?
I think we've covered what the highlights of what's in your packet and have gone beyond that in order to update you since the packets were distributed.
Well, it sounds good. And while we have everyone here and on board, I just want to go over the consent agenda. You've all had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting and financial reports. Are there any comments or concerns about the consent agenda? Hearing none, then I declare the consent agenda approved, and that pretty much takes care of this evening. But we do have good of the order, and again, our hearts go out and whatever that was. So keep her in your minds, and we'll connect with her when she gets back here on Monday. Are there anyone have anything for the good of the order?
This is Ivers. I have something.
Go ahead, Ivers.
Right now there's a lot of dozer work going on to create fire lines, etc. And pretty soon people are going to be wanting to do some erosion control. And straw is one of the best things. And so Gwen has a lot of expertise in this, and it's important to find weed-free straw. I'm not sure where a source of that is, but maybe someone on the council could look into it, provide a list of sources for certified weed-free straw for erosion control.
Well,
So
we've got a
this is
whole
where-
valley full of straw. I suspect we can. Did someone else have an idea?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Gwen. I do have a list, or the Forest Service can get us a list of weed-free straw providers. I would suggest, I know in previous years when there's been a lot of fires, everyone is after the same straw, weed-free bales that you are small enough to lift, and pretty soon it's all going to be taken up. So if anyone has funds out there, I would start calling these people and arranging for purchasing as soon as possible, because everyone in Oregon is going to be looking for the same items.
That's a great point. Thanks, Gwen. And Cheryl, I will send you the email of a broker that deals in straw. He usually sends it overseas, but perhaps he'll shovel some in our direction.
Great. I'm sure Ari's ears perked.
Yeah, I was searching around at one point to make sure that I was using weed-free straw, and I wasn't sure exactly where to search for that. We just used the normal straw but it was for a smaller project, and we combined that with seeding in native grass seed. So hopefully that's able to outcompete. I have been doing some research on erosion and sediment control measures post-fire from BLM reports from previous fires, as well as U.S. Forest Service studies where they've taken all the information available to see what's most effective. I don't know how feasible it is for a lot of properties, but one of the more interesting and effective methods that they were talking about was potentially chipping up burnt up wood on site into mulch and keeping native wood materials on site and using them. And there were some other things that were used, but I need to get my bullet points together for the research that I've been doing. But that was just one of the interesting ones that I saw.
Okay. Any other good of the order? Okay, well, hearing none, I believe we've conducted our business this evening. Thank you again all for your patience and for your thoughts and prayers to those in our neighboring watersheds who have suffered so much loss and damage. Keep them in your minds for the next few days, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Night
all.
all.
Bye, everyone.
Night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for your perseverance tonight.
Bye. See ya.